We're here to talk football with the NFL legal tampering window officially opening here at 12. We are a couple minutes late. Thank you guys for hanging out. Those of you who've been waiting to join us, and you're waiting for good reason. There may not be explosive news, even though the Patriots have already made two moves, both very interesting, and both I think are actually really big moves for the team. But the big news that I'm most excited about, the big breaking news, is the addition of Taylor Kyles officially to the Patriots CLNS team, which I'm geeked up. And most of you guys out there, you probably know Taylor. He's worked with us before. He's been around working for Pat's Pulpit, and you've seen his work and you follow him on Twitter, I'm sure. But now Taylor's officially joining CLNS Media as a Patriots full-time beat reporter. So I'm geeked up beyond belief. So Taylor, I just wanted to say welcome.
Not to be, too cheesy, but this is literally a dream come true. I've always had a blast working with you, man, and this is really an honor. So I'm super excited. Sorry if I'm looking down, doing a little Adam Schefter impression over here. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm up to date on what's going on. But yeah, I'm super excited, man. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Hi,
And
everybody.
again, sorry, I'm sorry, Paul. Sorry, guys, we were late. And welcome to Taylor, who, again, if you aren't super familiar with, I guarantee you will be in very short order. You could go follow Taylor Kyles right now on Twitter, and you're going to see a tremendous amount of analysis and film work, which he is outstanding with, and I think really separates him from a lot of the other people you're going to see in this market, and that you're going to get here covering the Patriots on a regular basis. And it's a thrill to bring it to CLNS Media, in addition to Taylor having an opportunity to go down to Foxborough and cover the team on a regular basis, which you're going to start seeing his face in and around Gillette Stadium as they open up, and we have drafts and we have mini camps and all of those things, and Taylor's going to be there covering it start to finish. So that's really cool. Another thing we're very excited about before we get into some of the news, for those of you late to the party, legal betting is online betting is officially legal in Massachusetts. It started on Friday, and we're very happy to announce we partnered with America's #1 sports book in FanDuel. If you do sign up through us, which we would appreciate if you do, here at fanduel.com/Boston, you get that offer of $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 wager. Again, always make sure you're betting responsibly. But if you do it, and if you are looking to sign up, and if you are a fan of CLNS Media and want to help us support our sponsors, it would really be great for us if you did jump in here using this URL. You can put it right into your mobile browser. It'll direct you to the app, and it'll let them know that we sent you, which of course obviously really helps us as well. So again, please support our sponsors. Please welcome Taylor. And let's get into some football. The NFL legal tampering period is officially underway. It's one of the funniest named things in all of sports or all of anything. The fact that you're basically saying, here's something that's illegally legal or whatever. Regardless,
Fun contradiction.
it is really funny, but it is what it is. But we don't know if the Patriots are going to make a splash. So they're somewhere in that $35 million in cap space situation. But they are trying to move stuff around. So we're going to start with the dominoes that fell here. And we're going to start with Jonnu Smith. I think you can look at this two ways. The Patriots traded Jonnu Smith for a 7th-round draft pick, and honestly, they were lucky to get it. You can look at this as good. They got him off the books for this year and more so for next, when you're going to see some serious cap savings. You're getting about 3-4 million, maybe close to 4 million this year in cap savings, which is great. You need every single penny. But it's kind of sad because this was one of the centerpieces of what we thought was going to be a really explosive and important free agent class for the Patriots 2 years ago. And really, Jonnu is the poster child and emblematic of just what a colossal failure that entire class was. And it's still find perplexing that the Patriots weren't able to figure something out to do with Jonnu Smith's very specific skill set, and they couldn't get really anything out of him all of this time.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because Jonnu, by all accounts, he seems like a hard worker. Teammates seem to love him. You wanted him to succeed. The first season, you started to see that the role that I projected for him as more of an off-ball kind of move tight end, they wound up having to use him inline more because Hunter Henry couldn't fill that role. So he was kind of miscast immediately. He never manifested really as a downfield receiver, like you said, that really specific skill set. Even when you look back at a lot of his production with the Titans, he had some wow catches for sure that were contested and made you think He can be a red zone threat. He can be our big play guy. But a lot of the production was actually after the catch when he was wide open because of coverage busts and things like that.
Yeah.
So when I went back and looked, the hints were there. He's kind of a stiff athlete. He's never been a really great route runner or separator. And there was a
gadget
reason all
guy.
the catches were contested. Exactly.
Yeah.
So especially in hindsight, it seems odd how much money they gave him considering he was always going to be limited. And I just think because of just the way he produced on the field, they couldn't keep him on the field to produce at the level the contract would have made sense.
Well, that's the frustrating thing. You knew you were moving on. I think it's actually somewhat surprising that it appears they're not moving on from Hunter Henry and that he will remain.
Not disappointing for me. Disappointing for me.
Fine, different conversation another time, but also you've seen, I think Hunter Henry is, I think he, is as jaggy as Jags get in terms of what he does, but it's better than nothing. You disagree? That's fine with that, but we'll move the conversation there when we talk about tight end needs and how big a need they have here and whether they need to go address filling this hole. You're not really filling a Jonnu Smith hole when he leaves because he gave you next to nothing. Thing I always found most perplexing about him, Taylor, and then you can tell me why I'm dead wrong on Hunter Henry, and I'll sit here and I'll take it. But the thing that perplexed me most about Jonnu is you had to have done some scouting. You knew who he was. I assumed when they got him, they knew exactly the type of role they were going to put him in. And instead they brought him here and just didn't use him for anything. It was like they were trying to figure it out on the fly. So it almost felt like just a weird desperation spend to try to be splashy without any real consideration into how he would actually fit.
Well, I think you also have to take execution into consideration. If the guy was performing well, he'd be on the field. And the way that he performed kind of forced them to say, okay, we can't keep him on the field in passing situations because, like I said, he's not a great separator. His hands are very inconsistent. You'd see him a lot of the time bobble catches, double catch. He just doesn't really look comfortable downfield. Yep. So they tried. People seem to think that they didn't try to get the ball in his hands. But you have to understand they also have to use other personnel groupings, especially when they had Jakob Johnson and teams were actually defending those looks with base personnel. Yep. You were getting nickel a lot of the time when they were going with two tight ends. So they weren't getting schematic advantages. So you can't put him on the field because, what is he just going to be a check down option? No, put Kendrick Bourne on the field or someone else who can actually run routes, separate, give you a real threat and be a well-rounded player. So, I know it's popular sentiment that the Patriots didn't do enough, but I think more of it falls on Jonnu and that maybe they had bigger plans for him and they were like, well, he just can't perform the roles that we need him to perform. We got to have Hunter Henry in there and then someone else who can actually give us these mismatches and actually, again, just produce.
Yeah, and again, it shame, but it seemed they figured it out quickly. It wasn't working, and they de-emphasized his role, and he really never actually had one. So again, they're not losing anything with Jonnu Smith other than lamenting what could have been had they spent that money more wisely in free agency and able to have brought somebody in here who would have made an impact. Did not end up happening. We're going to get into some tight end options in free agency a little bit later when we preview just what the Patriots might actually do here when free agency actually does open up in a couple of days. And there are some names out there. We'll get into that in a little bit. But the next big item of business here, and I think this is a really big item of business, was that the Patriots were bringing back Jonathan Jones, which I don't think was a certainty. And I think as recently as a few days ago was reported that there's mutual interest, but they're not actually close yet, or they're not speaking the same language. So I thought for sure this was going to the wire into free agency with Jones doing what the Patriots often let their free agents do. Look around, shop, come back to them and say, what do you think? It didn't happen, which is honestly, I think, huge for the Patriots, kind of shoring up this player in a position that could have been a larger position of need heading into the offseason. It still is, but less so.
Yeah, I think this was their most important re-signing. This was when I really wanted to see them get done. I know there's an idea that Jonathan Jones wasn't good outside. That's not really true. He's very good outside. The problem is he was getting matched up against receivers who, when you get guys who are 6 feet tall and have a lot of inches on them and they're Justin Jefferson, he's going to get some balls caught on him. And he was competitive on most of those reps. I think he had some really bad reps against Stephon Diggs and T. Higgins where you started to question, okay, that was pretty shaky where his technique just broke down in uncharacteristic ways. But for the most part, he had a really, really good season, and he was getting a lot of publicity as, wow, the Patriots found another top cornerback after letting J.C. Jackson go. Now we know he's more of a CB2, more of a nickel guy. I hope they put him in the slot where he thrives. But again, I think he can move around. But this was huge for them.
As a slot guy, he was as good as as anyone these last few years, really, really playing well. I mean, I think it's pretty admirable when you take somebody out of somewhere that's their comfort zone, you put them in another position and just say, you're the best I got, do what you can. It's almost like in basketball, having a 6'5" guy play center and just be like, just do it. I mean, you're not ideally suited for it, but I believe you're going to battle. And as you said, competitive. So that was really good. It does, definitely. You look at the complexion of the Patriots backfield, you've got the rookies, you've got Jones, you've got Mills. I mean, that unit was good last year. Do you still want a top kind of, taller outside boundary shutdown guy? Yeah. Probably, but it feels, I'm not going to say luxury, but it doesn't feel as big of a necessity as maybe some other positions on the team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they can get away with just getting a long corner who can match up with those bigger guys well. Obviously, everyone wants a CB1. Everyone wants like a Prime Gilmore. Everyone wants Jalen Ramsey, who we're going to talk about later. Everyone wants those types of guys who can just match up and take anybody out. But really, they have a lot of good cover guys. They're just small. If they can get like a Rock Ya-Sin, he's somebody I really like for them as a longer corner who I think is shut down in coverage when you lock him in press. I think he could be that guy where, okay, he's on the backside of, 3-by-1 formations, man coverage. Just don't let them streak by you or, make a big play when you're on an island. I think he can be that guy. And then they can play the matchup game where last year you saw them kind of stick to sides more. Sometimes John Jones would follow true alpha receivers, but otherwise they really just stick to spots. But when those defenses are at their best for Belichick, or when they have a basketball team and they can play man confidently and say, all right, just play to your technique and, play big boy ball or, be quick with this quick receiver and, have skill sets to do different things.
And it is a thing that, Bill Belichick, you saw the evolution of his thinking over time, in terms of personnel and what he valued most. You saw I think you can go all the way back to when Asante Samuel and they let him walk and how desperately they needed that replacement and how badly that burned them not having someone who could come in and just kind of be over there. And then how much emphasis they put on a shutdown guy almost every year since, where you're talking about going from Talib to the year with Revis and then eventually to Gilmore, of like the luxury of knowing I cannot have to worry about this at all. This guy is there and is going to take that away and I don't have to scheme it. I don't have to worry about stuff. I'm just done. And so, yes, having that, what a big advantage it has, but also you can scheme those guys out sometimes. I remember, when Darrelle Revis was in the height of his powers with the Jets, he was useless against the Patriots sometimes because they didn't have a type of receiver that Darrelle Revis would necessarily match up with and take away. They were running a totally different type of offense. So Revis is just sitting there on a corner with some guy just running him up and down the sideline who was never going to get the ball, So
reminds you those mic'd up with Sherman where he's like, I'm bored out here. Like, can you please give me something to do?
Exactly. So like you have that also, where it's just kind of like, all right, I'll run my slot guys and my little guys all over the middle of the field, a lot of tight end stuff, and I'm not going to let you neutralize a part of my game. So there's that as well. But if you had to rate it now, looking at their positions of need heading into the beginning of the offseason, which is really kind of officially underway now, you check that box on you got Jones coming back. CB, OL, offensive line, and receiver, if you have to rate those, and throw another one in there if you think it makes the top four, just in terms of positional needs.
I'm going to cheat right now because I have my little Patriots roster breakdown. If you follow me, my handle's right in that little box down there.
Yeah.
You can see it. I got the spreadsheet open. It's where I have all my little designations for where I think guys are skill level on the roster, their value, that kind of thing. Number one, I have free safety because right now the only player you have at that spot reliably is Brad Hawkins. And I don't think a lot of people know who Brad Hawkins is. So that's number one now that McCourty's retired. You got a guy like Jesse Bates who could come in and immediately be the leader in the back end, be able to make those checks and do the high IQ things that McCourty did at such a high level for so long and has a lot of experience as that center fielder, but also can play a lot of the split field coverages that the Patriots started to experiment with all these insane passing attacks they played last season. Number 2, I have right tackle, because right now Connor McDermott is likely your starter. That's a spot you got to get shored up. I don't think they're going to go into free agency at this spot. A lot of the guys in free agency, one, come from more zone blocking backgrounds. The Patriots like their power scheme, especially with a guy like Jonnu, who doesn't have the agility to really be an outside zone kind of player, but he's big and he can move people. So you want somebody that fits that skill set.
Yeah.
I don't really think that guy's on the market. So I think that's going to be more handled in the draft. Number 3, I've got receiver. Now, this is specifically a Z or slot receiver. I think Devontae Parker, obviously, his health is up and down. They could definitely use some depth at X. But with Bill O'Brien's offenses, it usually runs through that really explosive guy in the slot, like your Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, Zay Flowers, who's basically Julian Edelman with a freaking with back.
Burst.
So I think somebody like that would be a really good addition. So that's number 3. 4 is where I have boundary corner. Now, this is because if the Patriots walked into next season with the corners they have right now, they'd be competitive just like they were last season. The pass rush would be a huge help, and that's what I think helped them at a lot of times where, Judon or Uche are almost getting there and passes aren't coming out the right way. But again, I think it would completely change the way they play defense if they had that more matchup guy who could play outside and against those bigger receivers.
Yeah.
And then 5 might seem high, but it's punter.
Now,
positional value, I understand it's kind of weird, but they just don't have anyone, and field position is such an underrated part of the game. And you saw when Jake Bailey was playing well enough to get that contract extension, he was affecting games because offenses had to deal with the defense starting at their own 10-yard line, a lot of the time inside their own 10-yard line.
Legit weapon.
Yeah. Exactly. So I really do think that's a position where if they can get someone who can reliably, pin guys or at least not have a bunch of touchbacks or returnable kicks, I think you're in a good spot.
The good news is, as you said, some of that stuff can be addressed in the draft. Certainly punter is one of those where it's like, do you feel like putting a pick towards a punter? And if you do, you're going to get a good punter. I mean, how good are they going to be at this level? And are they going to do everything you want to do? And also, you always talk about the holding responsibilities and getting stuff off and not getting your kicks blocked. Great. There's a lot of things that the Patriots look at. The last time they went, it's again, we'll see where they go there. But Bailey was top of his game until he wasn't. So it is weird where you had something that was, and they paid him that way too. They paid him top of market. To have something like that completely fizzle out when you thought you had it in the bag, definitely a bummer. They have to look at it. Yeah.
Weird. And the grievance and everything with him and Jack Jones filed, I think today he filed another grievance because of the suspension. That was just a weird situation there.
I think a lot of weird stuff, and I don't fully understand it. But those are the 2 pieces of Patriots news that we were talking about here, which I think, again, it's a good way to get started for them. I do wonder if this legal tampering period, Taylor, if teams will take it a little bit more seriously, because we know that they have not of late, and we know that that's been definitely an issue in terms of how teams are how the league is kind of coming down on people. So I wonder if we're going to leak anything out. The Patriots are typically pretty good at being, kind of more secretive about that sort of stuff. So we will see. Do you think that do you think there's a chance they pounce quick? Because we have also seen them strike early.
There's not a lot of people on the market I could see them really getting excited about. So I could see them kind of being patient, waiting and seeing what prices are looking like, what, certain players they may have their eye on or looking to get on the market. But really, I think the priority this free agency was retaining their own guys. That's been the case, I think, the past few years, where you just have leaders or players that are consistent and, a lot of young people, like corner is the first thing that comes to mind, where you just want to stay consistent and know that you have something good going into the draft, where I think is where they're going to do a lot of their damage. Especially they got another 7th round pick, not huge, but, they've got, I think, 10 picks right now, 10, 11 picks.
Quite a bunch.
So they can make a lot of they can make a lot of noise there. I don't see this being super exciting.
I have it right here. I believe total picks are what we're looking at. The first, which is theirs at 14, a second, a third, 1, 2, 3 fourth round picks, and then your 1, 2, 3, 4 sixth round picks, then a seventh rounder. All of those fourth and sixth rounders make it much more likely that you could see a bit of movement, particularly if you get a trade down in the first to accumulate more. They're in a position to do what they like to do, and that's package and move around and target the guys they want where they want to get them. So there's definitely, they can do some stuff, even though they're not loaded with first, seconds, and thirds. They have what they have. They have their picks at those positions, first, second, third round, 14, 46, 76. But as I said, 3 fourth rounders there and a bunch of six. So they might definitely play around. Real quick, we're going to get into Taylor's top targets. We know what he said positionally. We're going to get into some of the guys he looks at as possible guys the Patriots could bring into the fold here who might help at some of those slots. Before that, want to tell you once again about FanDuel, Massachusetts. Again, if you haven't heard, listen up. The wait's over. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, is here. New customers in Mass can get in on that action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you have to do is, as I mentioned at the top of the show, place that first $5 bet, and boom, that $200 goes right into your account once that bet settles. Just sign up at fanduel.com/Boston. That's the important thing for us. Fanduel.com/Boston. That's going to let them know we sent you, and that's going to make us all happy and allow us to continue generating content for you guys on a daily basis, which obviously is something that we want to be able to do. You can bet on all your favorite sports and all your types of wagers that you like putting, money line, point spreads, player props, much, much, much more. Obviously, as we roll into football season, that's going to get really exciting and interesting for a lot of people who I know really dig that with the NFL and all of the things that they have to offer. So again, bet now on an app that's extremely safe and secure, super easy to use. You're going to be able to get your money out quick. Don't miss your chance at that $200 bonus. Win or lose, that's coming to you. FanDuel.com/Boston. Make every moment more on America's #1 sports book. We do need to tell you, you have to be 21 or older and present in Massachusetts to take advantage of this deal. As we said, you need an initial deposit of $10 required to start. The bonuses are issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire in 14 days. Restrictions do apply, so see terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Have a gambling problem? Hope and help is here. Go to Gambling Helpline MA. That's Gambling Helpline MA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Heading back into free agency here, Taylor, I know we said safety #1.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you dig. And again,
Yes,
you're doing your Schefter. You got any good information?
So Jonathan Jones just signed for 2 years, $9.5 million. I'm
9.5.
trying to see where that compares. So Spot Track thought he was going to sign 2 years for $12.4
12 to
million.
14 is what I thought the number was, his market. So that's pretty good.
But here's the thing: PFF thought that he was going to get 2 years, 6.5 per year. So it's right in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, I think still a value deal for the Patriots and kind of locks up a position of need, but good information there. Let's get into some of the top targets here. And again, I know you said you're starting safety, but I know what the people want, Taylor. And the people want wide receivers. So we're going to throw out a couple of wide receivers you think might be available here as the Patriots are surveying this free agent landscape.
So first of all, I think Jesse Bates, obviously, like I said, is one of the more obvious choices for sure. One person that I kind of got really excited about yesterday that may not get other people too excited, Mac Hollins, because he's played under 2 former Patriots coaches, Brian Flores from 2019 to 2021. Last year, he was actually a captain on Josh McDaniels' Raiders. I think he's a guy who can give you something on special teams, although he's more of a depth receiver. But he's like that 6th guy off the bench where he'll come in and actually make a pretty great play and really be a solid contributor when you need him. They need depth at that big body receiver position because now all they really have is Devontae Parker as that guy that you would expect to consistently line up at X. But Hollins is actually also a fantastic run blocker. A lot of the Raiders' big runs came behind him or were around his area. So we can line up at that Z spot where Jakobi Meyers was and actually make an impact in the run game, had a couple big plays off reverses. So I think he's somebody that could also fit in pretty well in New England. And then Rock Ya-Sin, like I mentioned as well, is a really good cover corner. has experience.
Well, sticking with wide receiver here, you mentioned Hollins, you mentioned also Paris Campbell.
Yes, Paris Campbell. So I like him because I don't think he's going to be too expensive. This was the first year that he's actually been healthy. And he's that quick guy who I think they could fill into that Z slot role where you kind of spread out and he's the one you get it in his hands, then he'll make a big play. He's quick twitch. He's not really as, I want to say, shifty as someone like Edelman, but he's fast as well. So he can give you that explosive big play kind of potential. And he can move around a little bit. So I think he got some value there, again, at a guy who, like Belichick likes, probably isn't going to come at any crazy price.
Campbell, again, was supposed to be kind of a big outside guy there because of his speed. When he came out of the in the draft, he was a 4.3 combine guy, blazing fast. So I think, again, you're talking about adding speed, something the Patriots obviously need to be able to kind of stress the defense a little bit. Campbell brought that, but he didn't really bring that. It was a really inconsistent presence for him.
Yeah, and I mean, I also think that it's kind of a lot to do with his offensive situation. Like, didn't have the same quarterback consistently. His coach got fired, and then there was a whole circus last year, and he actually performed well in the contract year, and there's something to say about that. I think the situation that he was forced to play in really, and it's also a run-first team. So the guy didn't have a lot of opportunities, and I'm sure he wasn't great in them, but you did see that he had the ability to be a solid contributor to your offense. I think the Patriots really could walk into the season next year if they need more depth. But I think if they started the players they have now, they'd be fine. But I do think really what would push them over the edge is having not quite a Paris Campbell, but someone more like Zay Flowers, where he can really force a defense to focus on him. And then everybody's better because you can find those other mismatches because the defense is forced to, either have eyes on him in zone, quit more people to him in big situations, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I loves me some Zay Flowers. I've seen him in person a couple of times over the past couple of years. The benefit of having him play here in Boston College. The dude is just uncoverable. I mean, he's really, really, really someone you do have to account for. I know you're going to look at the size and people are going to talk about it. I know also coming out of the combine, people are going to look at his explosives and not being exactly what they wanted with his broad and his vertical. He put up that 4.42 40 time, which was great, but not elite. I think some people thought he might have snuck in earlier. I wonder where he might be available. I don't care what it is, and I don't care what the measurables and the size are. Dude can absolutely ball. So I think that's a name. And I know the Patriots kind of had him on their team at the Senior Bowl there, so got a good look there. And, when Belichick gets familiar with guys,
and also when you think about if you watch any video with him, any interview, Brett Kallman, EJ Snyder on the Bootleg podcast did a fantastic job interviewing him at the Senior Bowl. When you listen to him, he sounds like a Patriot.
Dude gets it. I mean, he doesn't even need the Patriot script. He just talks like that. Yeah.
He's really smart. You can tell he's passionate, that he cares. It's similar to Tyquan Thornton, who that was a lot of what they liked, was that he was very mature. He was very coachable. You could tell that he had a plan for success. He's extremely loyal. If he gets drafted by the Patriots, as long as they don't try to screw him over, he's never going to leave. So I think he's someone that you really want to get in your building that can grow with Mac Jones. That's, that becomes his guy. And then that makes Tyquan Thornton even better, because think about a really popular concept around the league, but the Pats love it. It's called Yankee. So it's basically play action. You have one player running a post to take the top off, and then underneath you got a crosser. Because that deep part is vacated, then you get space to work. But then it's conflicting because Zay Flowers specifically said on one catch where he was bracketed, ran a corner post where usually, you're bracketed. If the defenders stick to their leverage, it doesn't matter what you do because you shouldn't win on the route either way. Quarterback still threw it up. He went up and got it over another defender. Amazing tracking, great contested catch. It's the one I'm sure if you have seen Zay Flowers, you've seen it at this point.
Yeah.
That when you have that kind of ability as the smaller receiver who can go over the top, Tyquan Thornton can go underneath, and then with all that space, he just outruns the entire defense. They don't really have that guy necessarily. Kendrick Bourne, maybe. We haven't seen him do it consistently, so you can't rely on him. But, man, that potential really excites me, and that's what turns New England into a very scary offense with heavy firepower.
Yeah, and you really need playmakers, and Flowers is definitely one. You mentioned what Jakobi Meyers brought in a past tense. And so I'll ask you, do you think he's coming back? And should the Patriots bring him back, considering what his market is, which right now amazingly appears to be top of this current class market, and typically a name and a player who profiles the way Jakobi does wouldn't be the top guy, but this is kind of the free agent class that you're looking for right here. Are people going to pay for his Patriots-like success and what he did, and pay for a possession receiver who can't take the top off of defense, isn't a great yak guy, but is and can be productive? Is he going to get the type of money that's going to make it prohibitive where he's a lock to not return here, or should the Patriots be prioritizing him more?
Oh, really quick, Patriots just re-signed Carl Davis, which is a sneaky important move, gives them depth at nose tackle.
Yep.
Usually when teams are really running the ball well on them, which they couldn't do as well last season because they were much better. Godshaw is one of the better players at the position. But when they really want to beef up, they'll put Carl Davis in the middle at the nose tackle spot and then kick Godshaw out to defensive tackle, get him one-on-one matchups, and he just dominates consistently. So thought that was a pretty important one to throw out there real quick.
Yeah.
Jakobi Meyers. Oh,
yep.
Sorry.
No. Also, reports out there that the Broncos could be trading a wide receiver. They've had talks about Sutton, Judy, Hamler, and obviously when people are talking trade and guys that you could get, those names are going to jump and pop a little bit because there is another person who has been rumored, in terms of Patriots possibly being attached to in the trade. We'll talk a little bit about that person in a little bit as well. But again, these are your avenues. It's not just free agency and draft. It's also what you can trade for and whether or not you value those draft picks or you want to spin them into players who can come in and play now and contribute now. And that's certainly a way that the Patriots can use resources available to them, which is all of those draft picks and the $35 million in cap space to see what they can do to grab somebody who's established and ready to play. Into the Myers thing, what do you think the situation is here? Is he gone? Should they be looking to try to bring him back?
I think they should have I think they're going to let him test his market, but I think they have a price and they're going to stick to it because he has a limited skill set. If a team wants to overpay, that's what bad teams do is they pay unless you have a ton of money and you're just like, hey, this is the guy that
Patriots really just did it,
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like they clearly have to learn their lesson, and every team makes mistakes. They make fewer than everybody else, which is important to keep in mind. But I just don't think Jakobi, as much as I love him, I think that other than really leadership and locker room presence, and as a guy who's been that cog, and consistency, I think is really what you would lose without him. But again, if you really prioritize that, get a guy like Zay Flowers. He'll be there at 14 unless something crazy happens, just because there's so many teams that have needs elsewhere. And I don't think a lot of them are going to value receiver that highly relative to what their team needs and who might be available. But, Jakobi's consistent. He's great on third down. He's a great chain mover. But, they also were kind of forced to, because he was the only consistent player, put him in situations where he didn't excel, like throwing him short passes and screens where you expected him to make plays after the catch, which just isn't his strength. But he is a really good receiver and he's a good presence. If a team has money, I could see them, throwing him more change than the Patriots are willing to. But if he's affordable, I don't see why you'd want to move on. Kendrick Bourne's going to be a free agent next year. Tyquan Thornton, you don't know what you have in him yet. Devontae Parker, again, a guy who gets hurt and, is more of a plus if he's available, but you can't really pen him in and more pencil. So I'd love to keep him. I don't think there's any downside if he's affordable. But if the money gets too rich, I don't think they're going to move. Yeah. Even though it's the Rosenhaus, who Belichick loves, I
know they've got all these little side hustles and side deals. I'll sign this guy. You got to give me so yes, Rosenhaus, they do have that established relationship. I'm always dubious here. I just think I agree with you 1,000%. It's what bad teams do. Okay. Bad teams pay way up in market for a player that, again, if you want to put everything on a scale of 1 to 10, they're going to pay 9 money for a 6 player. And that's just bad. What you want to do is pay, 3 money for a 5 player and have almost a negligible difference between the expensive guy and the cheap guy. So again, it's because of that skill set. It's a high floor, low ceiling guy that I just don't think you can devote X amount of your cap to just because you want to make a splash.
And to that, like how I said, the Patriots make fewer mistakes. A big reason that they're not doomed when they have like the contracts for Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, which just were not good at all in hindsight. They're so good at getting the great bargains, filling the middle of the roster with players who are on just perfect, if not like kind of steal contracts where you're getting exactly what you need out of them because he knows how to use them. That's how they get away with it, because they still have a lot of players that aren't making enough money that hurts you. So when you have a couple bad contracts, it's not good, but at least the rest of your roster is well positioned, so it's not killing you, as opposed to a team like the Rams who just signed all these big players. You win the Super Bowl,
The
but
bill
then
comes
the money
due.
dries up. And then you got to sell guys off who are still good. And, you could argue that, fine, Jalen Ramsey is 28, he may be on the decline, but Stephon Gilmore is still a plus player at 32. And they're both freak athletes who are performing very well, even though people love to say that they've fallen off a cliff just because they're not quite at the level they were when they were 25.
That bill comes due, and it's coming due for the Rams. And obviously you got to be smart, but you got to be creative as well. I think that's exactly right. What the Patriots have done, will continue to do is
also the 49ers signed Javon Hargraves, which is absolutely terrifying. That is insane. That is that's already arguably the best line in the league, considering the Eagles lost who they did. And they took a player from one of probably the best defensive line in the league when they were together. I'm so glad that they are not in the Patriots division. That's insane.
That's crazy. So, real-time updates. Thank you, Taylor. Keep us updated. You guys see anything in the chat, throw it out there for sure. As we kind of continue talking here, we'll kick around a few more things and we'll probably settle, but we will also jump back on if there's any breaking news and bring it to you almost right away. We'll be on it. Certainly anything that involves the Patriots that we think is of major interest or import. You can stay here with us all day. Best thing you can do, subscribe to that YouTube channel here, Patriots Press Pass, and hit that little bell, turn your notifications on. When we go live, you're going to be notified. And that way you can kind of jump in and watch along with us as we dissect whatever it is that the Patriots do. This is probably going to be the way all the way through this week, as kind of free agency is not officially underway, but will be, and we'll be talking about it all week long. Put a bow on the Meyers thing. As you said, they put the price on it. He walks or he doesn't. But the reality is with a guy like Meyers, Taylor, is that even if the price is not right, and they shouldn't spend what he ultimately gets or is going to get, they will be a little worse if he leaves. So that happens sometimes, is you do suffer some losses and you are a little worse. But again, one of the reasons why you have to address it in a different way. Now, let's just throw it out there because it's what everybody's talking about. Hopkins, conflicting reports all over the place. Last week, I know Greg Bedard had said that it sounded a lot like the parameters being thrown around for what might take to get someone like Hopkins would be a second and a conditional or something like that. And it sounds like a very Patriots sort of deal, almost as if it was based off of discussions that have already been had. And he kind of alluded to this sounds like they might be further down the road than we think. I saw another report recently, and that if he comes, he'll play ball, restructure the contract, make it work. Saw another report another day or so later. Hopkins might not want to play ball. He might want to get paid, but he's going to get paid. So wherever he goes, he's got to accept that deal and accept whatever is going to come after it. But then I think a lot of Patriots fans are like, yeah, give the second, go get Hop. But then you see a guy like Jalen Ramsey.
He's not going for a second. He's not going for a second.
Jalen Ramsey is 28 and still one of the 5 best cornerbacks in football, goes for a third. Okay. Mm-hmm. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be 31 when the season starts. He's 30 now. He turns 31 in June. This dude is not going for a second. So I think that price comes down. The question is whether or not you'll be able to restructure and work with him, and if this is an appealing destination. But if the price is right, do you make this move? Does it make them better, or are you paying for past performance?
I think it absolutely makes you better. I think he was still very good last season. He's not as dynamic as he used to be, but I think he's still someone that can dictate coverage. And you saw it in the Patriots last year. They used a lot of brackets and paid extra attention. Their game plan very much centered around taking away DeAndre Hopkins. You see how much respect Bill Belichick has for him, and he's one of the greatest talent evaluators on the planet. So I think if they bring him in, then that says something. They think that he can contribute. Not a lot of people know him better than Bill O'Brien. I think the whole thing with him is overblown. There's every report has indicated that they're both professionals and would be willing to work with each other. So I hear that come up, but I don't really think that's significant enough to be a factor. And I do think he'd be a plus addition. But again, I would like to see them go younger so they have someone that they can kind of mold and have in the system. Although obviously they've struggled to develop receivers. Have yet to see what's going to happen with Tyquan Thornton. But yeah, as much as I think they have enough veterans and solid players that, Hopkins isn't someone you need. But yeah, I think
That's
it would
the
be a good
thing.
addition, but it's not. It's not a huge deal to me, honestly.
If it's that's the thing is like you have to bring in people that elevate the room in a significant way, or else if it's just going to be another person in there, like is Hopkins going to be a focal point of this offense? Is he going to catch 110 balls for 1,400 yards and 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 scores? Is he that guy? Can he be that guy in this offense? Is he the type of receiver that someone like Mac Jones needs? Because, because of his hands and his contested catch ability, because Mac's not able to zing it and fling it all over the place, you need to be able to have a guy who you can throw to covered. Maybe
He can still sling it and ding it. Don't worry, he can. If he has a clean pocket and his right tackle isn't like a fifth string tackle, he's okay.
Okay. We'll get the Mac Jones is a different conversation for a different time. We we have our feelings, but again, not the biggest armed quarterback is all I'm saying.
Yes.
Speaking of noodle armed quarterbacks, Jared Stidham, and this was put in the chat. This is real. Stidham going to the Broncos here on a 2-year deal. We know the Raiders have kind of figured things out, and so here you are. Stidham,
backup quarterback's one of the best jobs in sports. Good for him.
Yeah,
happy for him.
Yeah, go get it. It's life is great. You can do no wrong. You come in because the other guy played like trash. He played like trash, so you can't lose. You come in because they're injured. The expectations are low. Exactly. It is a terrific game. So you're not 100% in on Hopkins, and that's totally fine. If it were a guy like Judy and the asking price is a second and a fourth or a second and a fifth,
gosh,
what happened?
Mike McGlinchey got signed to the Broncos, 5 years, $87.5 million. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
About that. That's rich for my blood.
Yeah,
I wouldn't pay that.
Yeah,
good for him. Glad to see guys get paid.
Yeah, exactly. It's the one league where you want to get as much upfront money as possible. So you got to get paid. It doesn't last forever. If it was Judy for the Hopkins asking price, do you play ball?
Maybe I haven't watched enough Judy. I do think he is definitely someone who, if used correctly, can be that kind of game-changing player. But he's someone where I'd rather just get a player who, you already know can produce.
Go draft
like
a guy and grow
JSN or a Zay Flowers, where it's like they showed in college they can be the focal point of an offense where they produce at a high rate. So at least that track record's there. Then it's okay. Just put them in the right spot to succeed. And don't take a project where you're expecting it's going to, like Tyquan Thornton. You knew that he was going to have to put on mass, and it was going to take a year for him to, one, understand the system and also be in a physical position. Because what people tend to not really think about is that after the draft, you were literally conditioning to do something that is not football. The drills aren't football. The drills are basically just to see what you could be at your best, peak athleticism given where you are at that time. So they're not training for football. It's much harder for them to start the season as rookies versus the year after. Where Zay Flowers is already prepared and has been working out like a maniac.
Look,
it's just, I'm sorry I'm saying it a lot, but he's just a perfect fit.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, I'd rather him than trading away a good pick for Jerry Jeudy.
The market is clear. You draft and develop the receiver position because it's expensive as F to get them later on, whether it's in free agent or the amount of capital that you have to spend to get one of these top guys in a trade. So this is the one area I've always been most shocked that Bill Belichick seems to have. Normally he's ahead of the curve in terms of market trends. He missed the boat on receiver. This is one where you have to draft them early and often, not once every 5 years and hope that it hits. So I think I personally believe one of your first 2 picks every year or every couple of years should be towards a receiver, because you got to keep loading up. You got to keep loading up there. And that's where you get them. There's value to be had there. Other positions can be gotten in other ways more cheaply, but that's the best way to get yourself a receiver. Reason I think Jeudy makes sense is he's the exact type of player the Patriots do like to trade for, because he is at the tail end of a rookie deal and they have 2 years left on it. So you are going to get decent value there and then determine what you do after that. The Brandon Cook situation, I think the first year he came here was similar, where you knew you had 2 years. So you're giving up some draft capital, but you know you're going to get value and possible wide receiver 1 production out of a relatively affordable salary, which again is worth it when you factor everything else in. So I would go second for Jeudy, but that's me. Go ahead.
But then I think it's still it's also important to remember, picks are only worth what you use them on. And again, that's why with 14, you have to, like I said, no projects. Like I want someone who's proven in college they can handle the workload. And then you get somebody for, for 4 to 5 years instead of that 2 years. And then you figure out what to do with them, get the compensatory pick. You get more time and you don't spend that much more capital than you would have spent to get another player. Because dude is probably, like you said, he's probably going to go for a second. I'd rather just spend that first and be able to have a reasonable contract where I have control of the player and can make sure that I develop them in my system so they think the way I want them to think in terms of, how we speak in the language and the culture.
Totally.
Like
but I think in order to do that, you have to take a few swings and live with a few misses, and that's exactly that. So let's rip through a couple of other things as we're talking about here. We mentioned tight end. It's not among your top needs here, but mention some names that you think might work.
Yeah, so Dalton Schultz, he's that inline Y guy that they haven't had consistently. Hunter Henry has been that person, but I don't think he's got that really nastiness that you want from, again, the right side where the tight end usually lines up and where they run a lot of their power schemes. Hunter Henry was fine. I thought he was best when they went to the second level and they used him on the move so that he had that advantage of either having a head start or kind of going against guys that were more his size. But Schultz gives you someone who can really be a plus rather than just being a body in there. And he's also the Jason Witten type where he can find the holes in zones. He can make a contested catch in the red zone, things like that, where he may come at a bit of a richer deal. They have enough money, and I don't think they're going to make enough splash moves where they necessarily need it. But again, you don't want another bad tight end contract. But I think he's a solid player who'd do well in their system. Although the tough part is I think they do want to start Hunter Henry. I think he showed, and I have a compilation if you want to look on my Twitter and search Hunter Henry, you see that he can still separate, and he's very good at that. He can also, I think, do more than he was used for last year. We saw his first year in New England. He was a great red zone threat, was awesome down the seam, had a lot of production, and then he got hurt, but no one knew, so it just seemed like he'd fallen off a cliff. And he was hurt to start last season as well, and then there was the whole fiasco with the offensive coaching staff. So you have to give him a pass and understand he wasn't put in a great position to succeed, and he can really start living up to that contract. If he catches 7 touchdowns in a season, his contract is worth it. You caught 7 touchdowns, and it's going to be at least 500 or 600 yards, third down conversions. He can be the safety blanket once Jakobi Meyers leaves if he gets paid more. Sorry to go off on a tangent on what they already have, but I think in terms of starting tight ends, they're already in a solid position. Hayden Hurst is someone I could see them also use, someone I think would help teams respect their 2 tight end sets. He's another guy who's well-rounded, comes a little cheaper. And another name people may not be thinking about or have heard of is Jordan Akins. He has experience under Bill O'Brien when he was in Houston, and he actually is big, really, he's like 6'8", big receiver, freaky athlete for someone his size, has nice acceleration, can make tough catches. I think he'd be an interesting low buy, maybe like a 1 or 2 year deal, just see what he's got left in the tank. But yeah, again, experience with Bill O'Brien and his system and had a lot of success in those empty sets running down the seams.
Yep. So that's tight end. And again, you do not have this among your top needs of the Patriots. So again, someone like Schultz is probably a luxury item that's going to be difficult to retain, but you could see someone like Hurst being, I think, somebody that they could potentially take a swing at. Cornerbacks, we did talk about that. What are some of your top cornerback targets that they might look at?
So I have 2 guys I really like. The number one would be Jamel Dean. I think he's really the cream of the crop in this free agency class. Big, athletic, long, has experience going up against big receivers who are really competitive, and he can hold his own. One thing I don't love, and I think this is more of a coaching thing, or maybe it's what he's comfortable with. I don't know. These are things you only learn if the move happens. He plays pretty upright, and he can be a little too aggressive, similar to Jack Jones, where he can give up big plays just because he's a little undisciplined. But I always think of Jalen Mills, how he, was much maligned before he came to the Patriots for being someone who's over aggressive and got burned a lot. And he credited Belichick with teaching him tendencies and helping his discipline because he understood when to take chances and when, I cannot get beat deep. I'm not jumping this until I see it come out of the quarterback's hand. Yeah. So I think Jamel Dean can be that true number one that a lot of people want. But I think they can, rather than go the number one cornerback route, they can get back to their matchup style of defense where, like I said earlier, basketball team, guys who are different sizes, and Rock Ya-Sin, I think, may not be someone who covers everybody, but he can cover those bigger receivers who gave them a lot of trouble last year. Those are the two names that really jump out for me that I'd like to see them show some interest in.
Yep. Okay. And then lastly, we're talking about, I think everybody's going to understand here how bad they need the offensive tackle. And you have an interesting name here on the offensive line.
Yeah, so old friend Jermaine Illuminor.
Yeah.
This is honestly more of a representation of what I think about
the market
tackle class. Like I said, it's a lot of right tackle. It's a lot about right tackles who are more zone blockers. That's not really a scheme fit for New England. Also, Juwan Taylor, great pass blocker, not a good run blocker at all. Pass protection is the priority, especially at tackle. But if you are a minus in the run game, that is significant for them. And even their backups usually are more run-oriented players, especially on that right side. But Jermaine Illuminor had the best season of his career. He had a really tough slate of opponents he faced last year, including both Bosa brothers. Although he did struggle, as you'd expect any tackle to, they had to give him a lot of help, which skewed the numbers and made him look like he was a little better than he was. Got knocked back a lot. He's not someone that I think is your reliable starter for the next 2 years, but he's someone where you sign him if he's willing to be a backup, if he gets beat out in camp, or if you can work out a situation where he understands it's tentative. And then if you do take Zay with the 14th pick, and then you have to wait a while until you get a pick in the second round, maybe Darnell Wright isn't there, who I love. Maybe DeJuan Jones isn't there, who's basically like I've likened him to Trent Brown if he ate a boulder. If those guys are off the board, then maybe you have to take more of a project, and you just want to make sure you have someone with veteran experience in the system who can slide in and at least be someone who isn't going to be a minus as long as you give him help in obvious pass situations.
And I think after seeing what people saw last year and just seeing Isaiah Wynn not turning into the type of player who they thought they were going to be fully when they drafted him, and obviously Trent Brown, who actually wasn't all that bad, but had some trouble staying on the field. And, there's some inconsistency baked in with a player like that in terms of their conditioning and their injury history. You do want to lock it down. And so when you're drafting as high as 14, you want to think that you can get one of the top tackle prospects. Draft board might not shake up that way just based on, who's in front of them. There's, I think, 3, 4, 5 teams who desperately need tackle help, which means even at 14, Patriots might not get one of the top 3 guys, in which case you might have to kind of dig deep or go deeper and get a project or a right tackle type guy or somebody who you can mold who will be okay, but you might not have it on total lockdown. So again, I think that's a wise direction to go with that first pick. I think if you polled all of New England right now, they'd be like, it's got to be tackle or receiver. Otherwise, I'm going to friggin' storm the castle. So we'll see what happens. I do think
unless it's Christian Gonzalez, who sometimes is around in mock drafts, which is insane.
Yeah,
that's your number one. If you're like, hey, you number one, Travis Kelce, Stephon Diggs, I don't care. I'm putting you on the number one on the other team. I just want that name to be out there. Christian Gonzalez, freak. If he's there, that is the one corner where it's like, okay, fine. I don't care. That's okay. I'm cool.
And you see a lot of mocks attaching corners to the Patriots too, but those appear to be the top positions. And definitely it is interesting because the Patriots have a lot of needs. Free agency is officially underway, at least the tampering period. But as we see, deals are already flying. So this Mickey Mouse concept of not negotiating with people or waiting on deals is just bananas to me. It's amazing. You know what I don't get? That they don't have at least the discipline, Taylor, to be able to tell their guys, hey, I'm going to give it to you first, but you cannot friggin' report it, okay? I don't understand how it just leaks out so quickly, just makes a mockery of the whole thing. But yet we're here. It doesn't matter. Patriots are doing internal kind of housekeeping to begin with, re-signing Carl Davis, re-signing Jonathan Jones, and trading Jonnu Smith for a 7th round pick, clearing up a little bit more cap space, gives them a little bit more flexibility to kind of get things moving. Again, reminder, we will be here all day, today, tomorrow, all night, whatever. If moves happen, if things Especially, I got West Coast Taylor until he officially moves out here and gets on the beat. So he's got an extra 3 hours. This dude could jump on at friggin' 4 a.m. Eastern. Don't be shocked if something
And
happens.
I do.
And he does, and he will. Okay. So between the two of us, East Coast John, who's getting up at 6:30 with his kids, and West Coast Taylor, there's about an hour that we're going to be asleep. So don't worry about it. News breaks, we'll make sure we get it out to you. You can find it on our YouTube channel, which I urge you to subscribe. I urge you also to follow Taylor Kyles for all of his inside information on Twitter, and check us out at CLNS Media, where all of his written coverage is going to land, and that should be super fun. And again, I'm already pumped. Day one, we're flying out of the gate. I think it's going to be great. So again, welcome aboard, Taylor. Super psyched to have you here as part of the CLNS family. And last reminder for everybody, just one more chance if you want to, if you're interested in this kind of thing, as you know, and you're living in Massachusetts, it is, we've opened the gates here to legal sports betting starting this past Friday. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, head over to FanDuel, sign up at FanDuel.com, and you can see which way. Right there, you can see that little thing above me, that little code. Yeah, it's right there.
This is really hard.
It's harder than I thought. You can scan it.
I guess.
You can scan that right there, and it's going to take you right to our page, and you can take care of it then and there if you're interested. Save your receipts. There will be some sort of giveaway if you do sign up with us that we're going to announce in the next week or so regarding everybody who does subscribe for any of our sponsors through this URL. Again, it's fanduel.com/Boston, and the deal is you get $200 in bonus bets. All you have to do is make a $5 wager with a $10 deposit. No matter win or lose, that money comes to you. So again, it would be a huge favor to us if you are interested in doing this, that you do sign up going to fanduel.com/Boston. That's it, man. We'll check back in later if there's anything going on. Parting words, Taylor, before we sign off.
I mean, this was fun. It was a good first show. I'm excited to do more.
Yeah. As are we, as I'm sure the viewers are, just based on the comments and all of that stuff. So again,
and thank you for the kind words, everyone. Also, it means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for jumping in. I know it's a Monday afternoon. I'm surprised to see so many people kind of jumping in here as we're just getting started. Obviously, as we said, if there is news, we will bring it to you right away. For Taylor